Welcome back, everyone. Hello. My name is Edel Kenny. I am the Education and Enterprise Coordinator with the Cranmore Regeneration project. I'm a colleague of Celia's. Myself and Celia are the education team with the Cranmore Regeneration project, and I'm known to interrupt Celia while she's busy at work with cups of tea. And I'm also the community representative on the Cluster Advisory Group. So we're back with our panel discussion. The topic is experiences of mentoring in Ireland West and Northwest, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our panellists. I'll start on my left. First of all, we have Lisa Wallace. Lisa is a community worker with the Cranmore Community Co-operative. She has completed the community mentoring and advocacy course and is a volunteer and mentor in her community. Beside Lisa, we have Josephine McGreed. She is the Adult Guidance Counsellor and Coordinator with MS-LETB, which is Mayo Sligo Leitrim Education Training Board, and some of the colleagues are here today. Josephine has been an Adult Guidance Counsellor for a number of years, all her life, worked with adult learners, and she's a great understanding of the diversity of needs of learners. Beside myself here, I have Nikki Ugin. She's the After Schools Coordinator with Sligo Springboard Family Support Service, and she has also completed the Community Mentoring and Advocacy course. On my right-hand side, we'll start with Tina Butler. She's a CE Supervisor with the Abbeyquarter Community Centre and is actively involved in the community. Tina has completed the Community Mentoring and Advocacy course. Beside Tina, we have Rory Breslin. Rory is a local resident, a student at Maynooth University. Studying community and youth work, Rory is currently volunteering with the Cranmore Community Co-operative with a focus on Youth City and Young Social Innovations programme. To my right is Seamus Morrissey. He is the Project Manager of West Northwest Higher Education Cluster, which comprises of Atlantic Technological University and University of Galway. The West Northwest Connect initiative aims to ensure that more young people from disadvantaged areas in the West and Northwest get into and complete third level education. And that is our panel for today. The format that I'll use is that I've got a series of questions that I'm going to have the panel address, and then there'll be time at the end for audience questions towards the end of the presentation. So start off, first question goes to Lisa Wallace. I said, Lisa, you as a learner, you have completed the Community Mentoring and Advocacy course. Can you tell us about your experience of taking part in the course?
My experience really was that I found that it really built confidence within myself. I left school myself at 17 and I went straight into the world of work. I didn't go on to college at the time, and I was about, I'd say during COVID then, I always worked in the community as a volunteer with different organisations and different groups. So I suppose my volunteering experience. Then when Celia got in touch with me about the programme that they were going to develop about the community mentoring programme, I thought I'd try it out and just see where it went from there. I suppose I always like to kind of give back to the community and be actively involved in the community, and that was the main aim. So during that course itself, I felt that I learnt a lot from all the other people that were on the course with me. It was a really big help in building confidence for myself. I suppose I wouldn't normally be here speaking in front of this many people other than completing that course today, because I do get quite nervous speaking publicly. During that time then, when I completed the course, I felt I networked with a lot of people, and it spurred me on to kind of take a different approach in my life, and I decided to change career paths, and I went on myself then. I'm in my third year of my degree in community development and business enterprise, and I now work as a community development worker with the Cranmore Co-op. So that's just my experience of the whole process.
Thanks, Lisa. And you mentioned there that led you on to changing your career path. I suppose we go maybe to Josephine next, who's an adult guidance counsellor. So Josephine, in your experience and your day-to-day, what barriers are adult learners experiencing?
I was thinking of this question as we were gathered here this morning, and there are a number of barriers, but the big one is, how do I learn? And Joey, you named it. When they hear the word assessment, they think of a test. and the whole confidence goes down. So as to have a good understanding and support, and this is where it's great to see the mentoring team in Cranmore, where I would have referred many of the students and the learners to Celia and to Edel to this programme. So the barriers are, how do I learn, but how do I do an assessment? How do I embrace my understanding of what the questions are, but my life experience and the theory, and put that on paper? That's can be a big struggle. But once you get good mentoring, good guidance, good support, whatever we call this project, once the person can get the confidence to do that, it gives them a great access to move forward. So between confidence building of their academic ability and putting that on paper, because that's what's needed most of the time, and moving forward. But in addition to that now, with COVID, the big one is broadband. I don't know how it is in the Netherlands. We do have a struggle with broadband and access to broadband. And the other one is IT skills, developing that IT skills. After COVID, now we are bombarded with information. So it's how to prioritize information, what's important and what's relevant to what I need to do. The other one is a cost. Cost is becoming a big issue for many people. Childcare is becoming a big issue. I deal with the adult. Life goes on through the learning process. But you know, there's disruptions in life. And for many people, we all have disruptions in life. But you know, to continue with the study and to have a good mentor to support in that journey is very important. And then, of course, transport is a big issue here. But with transport, thanks for Springboard, thanks for lifelong learning, thanks for all that great access now to education. You could be isolated in studying alone. So that's where this good support of keep in contact with somebody, but keep in contact with a group to keep the confidence going and building on the confidence.
Thank you. Good, that's okay. So you touched there about confidence building, and that's something that, Tina, you raised there after you heard from Gus about how your confidence was lacking before you started, and you found somebody in college who supports you through that process. Now, you also have been on the Community Mentoring Advocacy course. How has that impacted on your day-to-day work?
Well, I think from the course itself, I found that it gave me... I heard other people. I heard other people's voices and other people's opinions, because sometimes when you're in a job and you're doing a job, you only hear yourself rattling around, like, you know. So I found that that was a very, very beneficial to me, to hear other people speak, and even the tones of voices that they were using, and all those sort of different things that their experience, their life experience, what they had to bring to the table, as I call it. But what I found most beneficial to me is that I had been mentored, but didn't know I'd been mentored. All from when I hit 30. That's when I went back to college. I worked all through my thing, but I went back to college. And I think it was hearing other people and having the confidence. Now, we started off on Zoom, and I hated it. I just hated it. I lost my confidence, because with my learning difficulties, if something comes into my head, I nearly have to say it out or I forget it. That's the way it is, like. So I found that difficult. But I went back to Edel, and I went back to Celia, and I went back to some of the people on the thing, and I talked to them about that. And I says, I'm finding it difficult. I find that I'm not engaging. So, like, you know what I mean? And they worked through what I could do differently or how I could do things differently. And we got through that. And so that was them mentoring me to stay on, because I found it a little bit difficult, the Zoom bit. But I got through it. And I think what it was, what I took out of it is that it's okay to be where you're at if you're happy where you're at. We don't all have to be going back to college and doing all these things. It's the mentoring is about making the person feel that they're okay. They're fine where they are, and that's where they want to be. And if they do want to go off and do other things, that you can support them in getting there. And you learn from them as well, like, you know what I mean? I work on a CE scheme, and I would have, let's say, 30 people that I would work with and mentor. And part of that is that you're trying to get them the courses that they would like to do. And a lot of the time, they don't know what they want to do. They don't know what... And so you have to engage with them and sit down and talk on where would you think you'd like to be? And what would you think you'd like to do? And then throughout that, you say, well, I think, you might be good at this. Would you like to give that a chance? And, it's about giving them something and then being able to come back to you and say, it's working, it's not working. And it's also okay. Like, I would have a lot of people that would be hitting their 60s, and now that's very young because I'm hitting 62 myself soon enough, but that's very young. But it's like they retire at 66, and kind of like, for them to go back into education or do something. But they're active members of our community, and they're very much involved in our community. And I think that what they want to do, we should be mentoring them into doing it the best that they can. So it's about having educational mentoring, it's about having all these sort of mentors, but it's not all about, it's about where the person is at and where they want to go. It's not where you want to go. It's not about you. It's not about you, I'm afraid. It's about them. And I suppose that's what I've learned as well, like, to communicate and to listen. That was one of the key things I says that I wanted to learn. I wanted to be better listener, that I didn't have all the answers, but I could listen, relax into it, and maybe come back at a later stage, which you did very politely today, that you said you'd get back to somebody, that we don't have all the answers all of the time, and I think that was one of the key things. And the network of people that we got out of the group that we worked with, that was very, that you had all these other people's opinions and you just didn't have your own anymore. So you could link in and say, listen, I'm having this, whether it was only on your own daily basis. And I suppose one of the questions you were asked as well today was, like, how do we prevent, how do we have a proactive mentoring program? And I suppose it all comes back to ourselves, that we take care of ourselves, and that if there's a case that you would talk about something in your own supervision, or you would talk about it with somebody else, that you don't take on other people's issues or problems, but you work towards it. So there was an awful lot of learning that I took from the course. And I find that I mentor the people that I work with, but I also mentor the people that come into our community centre and build relationships. So it's about relationships and respect. And from there on, you're on plain sailing. Yeah, that's what I learned.
Thanks, Tina.
Sorry, Deb.
No, it's okay. And that's why we have you with us today, Tina, because we're definitely going to have fun to talk. And I said, Tina is a CE supervisor. She's in the Abbeyquarter Community Centre. So if you're ever passing by and you want to chat and a cup of tea, Tina's the lady to pop in and say hello to. You mentioned your key takeaway there was to be a better listener. And I maybe come to you, Nikki, and ask you, what was your key takeaway from doing the course?
I had loads of key takeaways, I must say. I'm a migrant person here in Ireland, and I'll tell you a bit about my background so that you can know where I switched in mentoring. First girl in a list of 5 children. My African background, your parents will say to you, do it right because your younger ones are watching you. So I'd been mentoring from a very young age, And I suppose, when they give birth to us, your parents would tell you, number 1, engineer, number 2, a doctor. They give you your profession before you actually even attain whatever you have. So my sense of mentoring before I arrived in Ireland was more of this is what you do, and this is how you do it, and this is the outcome you have to, come by. I arrived Ireland, and I had my BSc in industrial design. I didn't do the architecture my father wanted, but somehow I made my way through. But when I got into Ireland, it was very hard to get myself a job, in that I was thinking of other ways. You just have to make money and get things moving. So I went into childcare. So I did the level 5, MSLETB, I did the level 6, I was working in the community, and then I'd been mentoring from a very young age, and all migrant women who would have come in alongside myself or after myself would have been coming up to me for ideas and things, so I was already, a mature mentor. I was telling them what to do, how to do it, taking them here and there, referring them for training and stuff like that, using myself as an example to say, look, forget about the degree, do something that can get you somewhere, meet people, and then you can leap up, to other things. So I I was mentoring my own way, and I was mentoring the African way, So it's like, this is what you want to do. What did you have? Okay, this is the way you go. I wasn't even listening to the mentees. But somewhere accomplishing, yeah. After a while, I said to myself, I need to upgrade myself, upskill myself. So I did my master's a couple of years back in leadership and management. And we did a small mentoring module there, but it wasn't in-depth enough for me, for the job I do within the community. I also had Diversity Sligo, and I also have some other migrant women groups that I am part of. So I wanted more than I got even from the master's course. So, and when I heard about the community mentoring and advocacy, I was like, that might give me more in-depth because it will be broad, And what I like from it is that we had the platform to engage and interact and learn from one another and listen. So I started listening, I didn't used to listen. I started listening to how you are facilitating someone but not dictating to someone. You are looking at what they have and helping them build on that, not what you imagined for them. But before that time, I had brought women into childcare because I thought that's the way to go, while some wanted healthcare, and things like that. So I learned from the group that sometimes when you mentor, you have to redirect somewhere else, because I used to think I have to come to the root of it. We have to get to the end together. But so I was able to say at this point now, I leave it to go on to MSLTB or go on to further, so that I relieve myself of the burden of how to continue mentoring for, because that was a question I asked, said, when do you stop with a mentee? Or do you just carry them on every time they come to you? I'm going to burn out, so... And within the women's group I said I'm part of, I've learned also to be able to identify other mentors who will be able to mentor other women, and the good question there, how do you identify, it's the skills that they have, it's the way, that was not my way, that they have to be able to carry people on and things like that. So it was a mind-blowing session for me in the class, and I learned to plan and prepare. I could just impromptu mentor, and that was the end of it. But at the end of it, do you ask your mentee, how did you feel about this session, What is the take home? And plan for the next time, I never used to do that, I just, we see when we see, and we roll that way. But it gave me structure. The training gave me structure in the way I mentor people, and I'm able to ask them as well for feedback, and that will also make me prepare for the next and make me better, and that's how I have grown. And I see it's not a burden on me anymore, because I do the beat that we agree on, and I link them on. And when I identified, like I said, a few older women, it made it easier, because they could also say, okay, like I can take it up from here and do things like that. So yeah, bit by bit, I believe I'm still learning, because when you're a mentor, you're not like there. I've also learned a huge amount from the mentees themselves, to make me a better mentor. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. I suppose what's powerful from what Nikki shared there with us is that she's formally been developed this mentor-rich environment. So she mentioned her relationships, how now they're all becoming mentees as well and taking that burden off you, but you've developed and grown this rich environment of mentees. So thank you, Nikki. So my go to Rory. So Rory, you mentioned at the start that you're a student at Maynooth University. Can you share with us your route to third level?
Yeah, so myself, I come from Calcher. It's not too dissimilar from Cranmore, around the corner really. And I didn't do brilliant in me leaving, so I went to Ballinode. Joey was in my class in Ballinode. And when, I suppose, I was just saying it to Seamus there, it's that access to education. I don't think I ever really dreamed, the first person in my family to go to university. I could never dream to go to a place like Maynooth or ATU. And it was the PLC courses that led me into it, the work experience. And obviously I didn't have a mentor, but seeing your work over in Holland and in the US, it's like I think that could definitely bridge a gap for young people to get into university, because I don't. The Leaving Cert, while it can be beneficial to many people, I think it doesn't really take into account the maybe intellectual disabilities, socio-economic background of young people, the years of austerity that Ireland's gone through, the housing crisis would go on. So I would just say, just the mentoring. I'm really impressed with your work, and I would love to see go ahead in Ireland. So yeah, that's my background and how I feel today.
And Nick, Rory, a little bit more from you there. So now that you are a volunteer within the co-op, how have you addressed some of those issues for others within the community?
I suppose it's the same as Nikki said, building the relationships, being a critical friend for the young people and empowering them. The mentor in Europe seems to be a powerful experience for the mentors and the mentees, and just keep working. Yeah. And
you mentioned that the need to bridge a gap. For those in the audience who are from the Higher Education Authority, what message would you have for them as to how they can support people to get into third level? Yeah, it's just I suppose definitely addressing the needs of the young people, meeting them where they're at, not just putting them into groups of where they come, recognising their social economic background, and definitely I would say this mentoring programme. I'm only become aware of it, but endorse that moving forward, I would say. Thanks, Rory. And then Seamus, yourself, then, what you've heard from their panel today, and your work experience, do you also have a message you might add for the Higher Education Authority who are listening, hopefully, and how they could best engage with the communities?
Well, first of all, thank them for the money and keep it coming. We want to keep the money coming. I'm always wary. I think the HGA and policymakers have to realise that they're probably not the first to come up with whatever they're thinking of coming up with. I think that the community has been doing a lot of this work for a long, long time. The community work's been happening for, well, as long as we've people, I suppose, but there's been work going on for 50, 60 years. And I think it's to acknowledge that, as early as possible in any process, and to go out to the community, whatever idea they have in advance of potentially publishing it, and saying this is what's happening, and ask them, is this what you need? And as Rory said, people on the ground know better than anyone what they need, and I think it's to go to them as early as possible and as often as possible, and to avoid what might be perceived as a token gesture of a consultation near the end of a process when the money has been decided and the principles have been decided. Because I've worked in the community for 20 years, and the communities are very tired of being asked what they need and what they want, and being potentially labelled as saying you're disadvantaged. So I think that's important. Go out early, ask them, and then listen, which is the most important part, and reflect that on what they're told. I think that idea of a bottom up it's mentioned a lot, but it's actually really, really important that we do it, and we do it well. But this work takes time. This work is not going to be solved in 2 years, 3 years, or even longer, 5 years. So we need long-term planning towards this and long-term resourcing. And potentially what we want it to look like at the end should be decided at the start. And then just the other element that I think there needs to be trust that not one area is ever the same. You know, we're all working in different communities, they will have different needs. So we have to be flexible in what we deliver to those communities. So they're not going to be, like we cover the West Northwest region, a link between ATU and University of Galway, and I pulled together a proposal for what was needed for Path 3. And we were questioned along the way saying, well, it's not all the same. But I said, no, it's different areas. Donegal is different to Sligo, is different to Galway City. So they're going to have different things they need. And we had to, I think, fight a little bit for that. And that's important because there is flexibility. We've Path 3, 4 and 5 now coming down the lines of funding streams. People maybe who are outside of the higher education sector may not be aware, but we're constantly telling them, we know what we need in the community, and the community will tell us, so let us be a little bit flexible, don't dictate too much to us around it. And just the final point I'd make is there is a huge amount of work already happening, there's a huge amount of people already working in communities. We have to work with them. We can't go in and tell them we know it all. We have to work with the area-based partnerships. There's the FROGA, the youth organisations that are already there. We need to work really closely with them. And I think the HGA need to be aware of those people already doing work, and we need to continue to build on that work, add to it, and engage with them. So that's kind of my overall kind of perspective for them.
Thanks,
But
Seamus.
thanks for the money.
So we might go to the floor if there's any questions. Apologies, sorry, Celia. Thank you for that. That's why she's right there with me all the time when I need her. Tina, we do have a mentee who was unable to join us today, and she sent a message in. So we'll hear from that now.
So yes, so this is from somebody who's participating in the mentoring with me over in Cranmore, and she was to be part of the panel but couldn't come today. So Stephanie, there's some students here from ATU, from Health Promotion, Public Health, and Stephanie has kindly agreed on very short notice, like 5 minutes, to be the voice of our mentee.
I have been a mentee with Celia for a number of months. I graduated from Sligo IT years ago with a Bachelor's of Arts in Social Studies. I would have continued on to do a Master's, but at the time, my option was a research Master's, and I didn't think research would work for me. I would have preferred a taught Master's. There wasn't a lot of information or guidance available, so I didn't continue on. So I dipped in and out of Sligo IT website regularly over the years, but never took the next step. I found it hard to know where to begin, question the direction I could take, what course and why, difficulties in balancing family commitments, an option to study individual modules, micro-credentials, study at level 8 or above with Sligo IT. Would be amazing. Now, shorter tailored study options with a foot back in the door to higher education. My time with Celia has been most helpful and productive in pulling it together. Celia helps take the fear out of the unknown by putting a number of steps in place before beginning postgraduate study and working on those steps with her support. With Celia's encouragement, I have gotten active within my community and realized that there are supports I can utilize, supports I didn't know were there. For me, mentorship is a mix of realizing study options available to me, setting educational goals and personal development. And as a mature student there aren't many opportunities as great as that, and I am grateful for her time.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Just that comment from down there. I mean, we're all involved in access or widening participation, and the greatest challenge we have is we're constantly saying no to people because you're not eligible under this criteria or under that criteria, or that doesn't exist. It's a real frustration because we want to impede. We're going out to people to say come in, and then we're saying, well, no, you have to have this financial background, or you have to have this element or that. So it's a real challenge for us, I think, on a daily basis because we're trying to open out, widening. But linked to that, I think, though, we have a responsibility maybe to note these and advocate for this constantly trying to feed back, saying, look, this program isn't here, we need to look at it. Maybe we need more access programs. Maybe we need to change the criteria on a fund. And we do that, and we're involved at ATU and University of Galway are involved in HERE programs, and we're constantly feeding back, you need to change that, you need to address that, you need to look at that. Sometimes it's not heard, but I think that's part of that. When we hear something or a frustration that we can't solve, we have to try and note it, record it, and try and change policy and try and do that. That's the last part of our job, and it's probably something we don't get as much time as we would like to get on because we're student facing or we're people facing, but that's an important part of what we have to do as well.
Thanks, Seamus. We might want to thank our panellists here for sharing their experience. We're going to thank Lisa. Thank you to Josephine, to Nikki, Tina, Rory, and to Seamus.